Welcome to God's Plan Works. I am Dr. Frank S. Smith, founder of God's Plan Works. Hey, I'm so glad to have you join today's lesson this evening as we're outside in my backyard. We're doing this presentation. So if you hear some nature cricket sounds, it's because I'm outside here in the backyard. Hey, this today's lesson is a thought coming from the study of Deuteronomy. I was led earlier this week to reread the book of Deuteronomy with the main focus on the commandments of God. I've been doing series of lessons, and again, even the basis of my book. Jesus said, he said to us, he said, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. He said, if you love me, you'll keep my words. And sometimes it's just good, even though you may know it and you have read it, to go back to as close to the origin of a thing or the origin of a belief or its origin, to revisit, the setting of it. And Deuteronomy is a second giving of the laws to this new generation that's getting ready to go in and claim the promise that God had promised their forefathers. And so Moses is going through rehearsing their history and going through and reaffirming the commandments that God gave to their forefathers for them to follow. So today's lesson, I want to, in your Bibles, if you have it, go to Deuteronomy chapter 4. And we're just going to look at, our lesson is based on verses 35 to verse 40 in that book. And I'm going to be reading to you from the New King James Version. Verse 35 reads this way. It says, to you it was shown that you might know that the Lord himself is God. There is no other beside him. Verse 36. It says, out of heaven he let you hear his voice, that he might instruct you on earth. He showed you his great fire, and you heard his words out of the midst of the fire. Verse 37. And because he loved your fathers, therefore he chose their descendants after them, and he brought you out of Egypt with his presence, with his mighty power. Verse 38. Driving out from before you nations greater and mightier than you, to bring you in. Oh man, I get excited when I think about this. To bring you in, to give you their land as an inheritance, as it is this day. Verse 39. Therefore, he says, know this day and consider it in your heart, that the Lord himself, he says this again, is God in heaven above and on the earth beneath. There is no other. Verse 40, that last verse. He says, you shall therefore keep his statutes, his commandments, which I command you today, that it may go well with you and your children after you, that you may prolong your days in the land which the Lord your God is giving you for all time. Man, as I read that, and it's sort of a building on our last video, in which you can go in my video files and find that last video. The question comes to my mind that I want you to consider, and I'm primarily speaking to those of you who are followers of Christ, and even to those of you who are considering what kind of God should I serve? Well, I want you to know the question that I want to put on your mind today is, what kind of God is our God? What kind of God is our God? Well, before I jump and tell you about my God, what kind of God he is, I want you to, I appeal to you to consider, if you will, the purchasing of my book, Doing the Greater Work. You can go to Amazon.com or one of the other bookstores, Amazon.com, and just search the title, Doing the Greater Work, and by Dr. Frank S. Smith. Also, secondly, would you be so kind to subscribe to God's Plan Works? And I want to thank those of you who are subscribers to my channel. And would you be considered to give me a thumbs up to let us know how we're doing? And finally, would you ring that bell so you can be alerted of upcoming videos? Look, let me jump right on into the lesson today. I don't want to keep you too long. The question that I want to I pose so that I can answer to you who may be in doubt, and to remind those of you who are followers of Christ. The question is, what kind of God is our God? I want to testify to somebody today that to answer that question, what kind of God is our God? Well, there's 4 things I want you to consider in this study. And we're going to pull it out of Deuteronomy chapter 4 and some other texts that will support what we're saying so that you could do your own search. I want to say this before I get started, is that, look, I'm a man, I'm human, I don't claim to be, don't know it all. So everything you hear from me, I encourage you to check it out for yourself, because as my pastor, the late, great Dr. W.W. Wright would tell us and teach, he says, hey, you're just as responsible for what you hear as I am for what I say. Look, question is, what kind of God is our God? Look, here, number one, here's the kind of God he is. He's powerful. He is a powerful God. You'll see this in verse 32 of Deuteronomy chapter 4. You see, and in fact, I want to just highlight some things I said in my last video. He's a creator. He created it all. I mean, you read Genesis, you'll find what I'm talking about. But I want to belabor this lesson today. And in fact, he has the power to defy the odds. So no matter who you are, where you are, what your circumstances or situation may be, our God, my God, he knows how to defy the odds. Listen to Jeremiah chapter 32, verse 27. Here's what he says. He tells Jeremiah, he says, behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. And watch this. And there is, and he asked the question, is there anything too hard for me? Man, boy, I can go off on that one. He's asking the question, that's the kind of God, is there anything too hard for me? Here's what Jesus spoke and is recorded in Matthew 19, verse 26, and I hope you're documenting these down. He said, but Jesus held them and said to them, with men it is impossible, but with God all things are possible. Man, my question to you today is, what kind of God is our God? Well, let me answer that. Give you a second one. Give the second answer. Tell you what kind of God is my God or our God. He is not, wow, let me tell you something. He's not theoretical. He's a personal God. You read verses 33 and verse 36 of Deuteronomy 4. He's not theoretical. He's not some myth. He's a personal God. In other words, he's a God that you can personally experience. That's what because this is what it is. No matter how much I tell you about my God, until you know him for yourself, you don't know what I'm talking about. But I do want to say to you, my God, he's a personal God. In other words, so the question again I put before you today in this brief lesson is, what kind of God is our God? Well, let me give you a third one. Let me give you the third thing to consider about my God. He said, my God, he's a passionate God. Verse 37 of the text, Deuteronomy 4, he's a passionate God. In other words, we are the beneficiaries of our ancestors' God who loved them. In other words, he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So if you embrace my God, or our God, he will become the God of your children, because he is the same. The same God that loved them is the same God that will love you. Let me say that again. The same God that loved them is the God that loves me, is the God that will love you too. Oh, I'm here. In other words, God knows us. God, let me say this. God knows us. Our God, he knows us. Why? How can I say that? Well, because he supplies, what's this? He supplies grace. He supplies mercy. He supplies love. He supplies all of our needs. So the question is, and before I wrap this up and get too happy again, what kind of God is our God? Number 4, let me give it a 4th reason about my God. He's sovereign. You see this in verse 35 and also verse 39. He's sovereign. In other words, it clearly states He's it. And see, in my last video that we published to you last week entitled, I'm it, he's it. There's nowhere else you need to go, because he declares there is no God like our God. Oh, hallelujah. There is no God like our God. Look at Samuel, 1 Samuel. Read this, write it down and go read it for you. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 2 says this: there is none holy as the Lord. Why? For there is none beside thee, neither is there any rock like our God. That's 1 Samuel 2 and 2. In other words, all we are required to do to really understand our God is to obey him. This is what Moses is trying to say to his people. And he's saying to us out of the annals of time, he's saying, obey him and live a long life. Oh, Lord have mercy. Look. Go to Psalms 53, verse 2. It says this: God looked down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand and did seek God. So he's looking. He's a person, God. He's looking to see, are you looking for him? And he can be found. So all I can encourage you is, walk in your faith. If you are a follower of Jesus Christ, walk in your faith. Why? Because our God is with us all the way. Man, how do I know that? Because as I told you last week, and I'll tell you before, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. He sent Jesus to us so that we might have relationship with him. That which was broken under Adam has now been repaired and fixed through Jesus Christ. And how do we know that? Because Jesus hung on the cross. Jesus died on that cross. Jesus was buried in a grave for 3 days. And on that 3rd day, he arose. And he arose because God the Father raised him up from the dead to prove that I loved you. That's the kind of God that even death can't hold you. It can't have no handle on you. Your grave can't keep you. That's the kind of God we have. So, hey, look, again, I don't want to keep you long. And as you get this message, and it's starting to get real dark out here, so I want to be ready to get this broadcast out to you. Look, I appeal to you once again before we go. Would you subscribe to our channel, man? Would you subscribe to my channel, God's Plan Works, and where we're giving to you just a little encouragement, little words of wisdom that will help you and strengthen your walk in God and your faith in God. Because God's plan, it works. If we work it, it works. So if you subscribe to our channel, give me a thumbs up to let me know how we're doing, and you ring that bell so you can be alerted of future upcoming events. And our task and our desire and goal is to publish a video once a week, every Saturday, so that you have it in your archives. So just remember this. Just remember the answers to the question, what kind of God is our God? Hey, remember the answers. He's powerful. He is personable. He is a compassionate God. And he is sovereign. There is no God like our God. So until next video, again, it's getting dark quick. Until next video, may God richly bless and keep you. May the Lord surround you with his grace and mercy. And above all, may God grant you his peace. Because, hey, as I always refer to Shirley Caesar's songs, he said, you know, the world didn't give it and the world can't take it away. Because Jesus says his peace is not like the world's peace. So I pray he give you and grant you his peace. So, hey, look, until our next video, hey, you be blessed. And please remember, hey, what kind of God we have? Oh, get the video. I answered. I gave you 4 things to think about. What kind of God is our God? God bless you.